Hey everyone, and we are here with Lisa Marie Blaschke live from the submarine, the yellow submarine room at Learnlife in Barcelona. And Lisa Marie is the program lead for online learning at Learnlife. Thanks for being with us, Lisa Marie.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be here.
And yeah, if you've never been in the yellow submarine room at Learnlife's urban hub in Barcelona, you're missing a trick because it's a lovely little room, isn't it?
Yeah. Very yellow. Very yellow.
Very
there's
yellow.
There's even little fish in here.
Yeah, I know. And the idea today, Lisa Marie, was just hoping that you could help us with just thinking about the Learn Life from Home offer in a way, because thinking about when you're looking at these online learning opportunities or physical on-site learning opportunities and trying to kind of figure out and weigh up options, most of them are generally quite almost neatly packaged in this is exactly what this is, and it's kind of pre-designed for you, but it's handed to you as a package of learning, isn't it? It's like, well, it's exactly like this. Whereas at Learnlife, the philosophy is very different, isn't it? It's not pre-packaged, one size fits all. And so therefore it can be, sometimes takes a bit of digging in to sort of say, well, what is this exactly? And how do we understand what the offer is? So could you give us an idea, if I'm a parent sort of looking at the best option for my child to learn, and my child has maybe, for example, we're a family that moves around a lot, or we're a family that stays in the same space, or, I mean, what kind of learners are you looking for in this program? What kind of learners does it suit? And how exactly does it work to have Learn Life from home?
Well, those are a lot of questions, and I'll do my best to try to answer them. The thing that I guess I want to stress from the get-go is that we are not a Zoom culture, passive consumption type of learning program. What we offer is opportunities for learners to really identify what it is they want to learn and how they want to learn it. And that doesn't mean sitting in front of a screen all the time. I mean, most parents experience this during the pandemic. I know I did myself with my kids, where they just signed in and then they spent a good deal of their time just sitting in front of a computer, listening to the teacher tell them what they needed to learn and how they needed to learn it. And then they would take exams online. And Learnlife isn't about that. Learnlife provides opportunities for families who are home educators that maybe want to supplement the program, their home education program that they currently have. And we do this by offering different building blocks of I guess you would call them courses, to make that analogy with the traditional school system. And they can choose whichever building blocks they need or that their learner needs in order to develop certain competencies and skills. So that's one group of people that may be interested in our online programs. And those would be the people that maybe want to just come in for a few hours during the week, whether it be experiencing Taste of Learn Life for a week, or going into a passion project, or some of our studios and our workshops. We've also got learners who have come into the program who say, okay, you know what? I want to have that social experience. I want to engage with other kids. And so they come in for a couple of days during the week, and they're actually in the physical space in the urban hub or in the nature hub. And then they spend the rest of their time learning online. And when I say learning online, I mean more learning at home, because many of them will have self-directed learning opportunities to do activities that aren't in front of a computer. It's very important for us that our learners have a good well-being, I guess, is really the priority. So we want to give them an opportunity to be able to learn, but also retain their health and their well-being. And that means not sitting in front of a screen all the time. And another type of learner that we offer our programs for is the full-time online learner. And that's the learner who says, I want to learn at home for the majority of my time. And then they might have a few things that happen at home where they engage with other kids in a social environment outside of the home, but it gives them really full autonomy, full agency in deciding what it is that they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it. And so when they meet with us, we sit with the families and we talk about what it is that the learners want to learn. We talk about what their goals are, what their passions are, what their interests are. And then we work with them to define what we call a menu, which is very personal, where they get to define how their menu will be structured and what components of that menu will be built into, the menu. And so you may have a learner, for example, we have one learner who he wants to be a soccer player or football player, I guess you call it in Europe, right? So he wants to be a football player, and he's working with a coach during the morning. And then he, after that hour of working with the coach online, then he goes out and actually, does some, I guess, football type activity. And then he starts his learning. And that might be something where he engages with other learners in a real talk, where they sit and they talk together about some of the issues that they're encountering, whether it be in their learning process or in their family situation or in social issues that are of interest to them. And then we'll have a number of other activities. They can engage in studios and workshops where they are connected with our labs here in Barcelona, and then we'll learn together with the learners who are here in the actual physical hub. And so it gives learners a big opportunity to identify what it is they want to pursue in terms of their passions and their interests. And I mean, that's what Learnlife is all about, is learners given the agency to define what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it. And with a personal learning plan, they can construct that plan and define it, and they can learn individually, they can learn with other learners, they can come to Barcelona and go to the hub. So there's a lot of opportunities for them to develop really a very highly flexible and personal learning plan.
So this personal learning plan sounds, I mean, it sounds like a dream come true in a way. If we're talking about personal learning and self-directed learning, I mean, the discussion around that tends to be as an approach in a fixed place. We have this learning environment. We're going to facilitate opportunities for self-directed learning within here. But what you're doing, it seems, is broadening it out and not just thinking about the what, but the where and the when. But that surely brings a lot of challenges. I mean, if you have learners all over the world, different time zones, coming in sometimes part-time, full-time, sometimes a mixture of coming into the physical urban hub or one of your partner hubs, I guess, as well, and complementing that with Learnlife at home. There's a lot of moving parts. So I guess it's a two-part question. I mean, how do you deal with such flexibility as a team, to make that work? And also, I imagine that this menu must be an evolving concept. I mean, how often is it that you kind of revisit that with the learner to say, what adaptations do we need to make? How can we adjust? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. The menus actually each month during the cycle, or every 4 weeks during a cycle, or I guess you would call it a semester. What we do is we identify what are the building blocks, what are the key things that the learners want to learn during that specific 4-week, I guess a sprint is what we call it, and then they will decide, what exactly they want to have within their menu, within their schedule, and then they'll also try to find opportunities, of course, when they can do it together, which of course helps us, because then we have one learning guide with a number of learners, or they'll decide to do it individually alone with the learning guide, or they'll do it independently. So we try to give them the flexibility to make those decisions. Sometimes there are some building blocks that are only offered at specific times, and so we'll work with the learners to find a schedule that will fit best to them. But the actual plan will be for a 1-month period, and then at the end of that month there'll be what we call oh my goodness, the word's failing me right now, but it's a transition period that we have a special word for it, and of course I can't remember it right at this moment, but we have a special transition period where they move from this 4-week menu into a new menu, and they'll assess what they've learned and whether or not they're ready to move on to the next level of learning. And then what will happen is then we'll come up with a new menu, and then that menu, the learners will then move on into that menu. And then at the end of the cycle, then we'll have a celebration of the work that they've done. And to get feedback from the learning guides and from their peers on their development, whether it be development from a cognitive or an educational perspective, and also from an emotional perspective, how they're doing emotionally and socially. And so there's lots of opportunities for them to develop, and we try to give them those opportunities as much as we can. And so you did ask about how do we achieve this? How do we realize this? Well, we're currently right now, most of the personal learning plans that we have are coming out of Europe. Most of them are in the European time zone. We do have a couple of learners who are outside of that time zone, an hour here, 2 hours there. And we're now exploring moving into the United States. And so we've got a couple of learners who want to actually learn in the United States for a year and then move to Barcelona and join the urban hub here in the city. So so we're really going through a pilot phase, and it involves a lot of iterations, a lot of looking at, what can we do to always improve. But that's what Learnlife is all about anyway. We're always looking at ways that we can improve on what we're doing.
Yeah, that's it. And that is the strength, isn't it? I mean, the absence of rigidity of structure is a strength that's constantly evolving. One thing that strikes me is thinking about learning at home, and I appreciate you trying to make the distinction always clear between learning at home and online learning, to say that it is a broader concept. Parents who might have maybe preconceptions of what that is from the time of the pandemic, I mean, I'm sure you must be challenged by that all the time. One thing that strikes me is that because this is personal learning, and it's truly, that the learner is assembling the menu, month by month as their interests and passions develop and emerge. So we're not really talking about a concern of issues of control. No, how do I control? How do I, know that my child is actually doing this? Because if they've chosen it, that's not something we need to really worry about. But think about that more as an opportunity. How do you actually bring the parents into this as well? Because I'm sure there must be a lot of opportunities to get them involved in the learning. If you're talking about beyond sitting at the screen and learning at home, how do you bring the parents into the conversation? And if you have any examples of how the parents support learning at home?
Well, the parents, the parents are involved as much as they need to be involved. We tell the parents that the learners will be directing their own learning, that they have the learning guide to support them and help them when they need it. And they may come to the parent and talk to them about, different things that they're challenged with. But for the most part, they're working together with the learning guides, or they're self-directing themselves. They're determining what they're going to learn, and so they have check-ins, for example, once or twice or even 3 times a week with the learning guide to see how they're doing, how they're progressing. They're given challenges at the start of the week, and then they attempt to meet the challenge. And so through that process, they're directing, how they learn. They're structuring their time. They're self-organizing. They're working collaborative with other kids, and these are all skills that learners really need for the future. And so so what we're trying to do is to not give them an environment where they're passively consuming information, but they're actively involved in their learning process, and that means a certain level of trust. I think not just parents having trust in the kids that they can do this. And even I know in my work in the area of self-determined learning, even teachers have trouble trusting students to see if they can really be self-determined or self-directed in their learning. And so it's a process that you have to go through. But our studies have shown that learners can do this and they love to do this. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Learnlife is because I see learners all the time being self-directed in their learning and making decisions about their learning that I didn't see, for example, in my own children when they were in the traditional school system. So it's a great opportunity for kids to learn those self-directed learning skills that they'll need for the future.
It does. I mean, one thing that stands out is the managing and structuring your own time as well, which I think is a skill that the requirement for that skill hits learners with such a jolt in the traditional system as they emerge. And, you know, especially even if they emerge into higher education where certain classes are not mandatory, you know, you're maybe not living at home anymore, and suddenly you've got to find that drive within yourself to do it. And I personally experienced that as a real challenge, you know, because nobody was sort of pushing me out the door in the morning and I had to learn to do it myself. So any way of advancing those skills and bringing them in earlier is surely something I'm sure parents appreciate. I do wonder about because it can be, you do have learners that are attending traditional schools, don't you? And that they're using the Learnlife from home as an add-on or as a complement, as an addition to their learning. Are there any challenges with that in terms of learning cultures?
Yes and no. I would say no, because the learners that do come to us, that are in the traditional school system, they do it because they want a break. They don't want to. Their parents have come to us and said, my child or my teen, they just don't feel happy anymore in learning. They aren't passionate about it. They have gone to school and they come home from school and they're just not excited about school anymore. And they want to instill that love of learning in their child, and they don't know how to do it. So they'll come to us and they'll visit our Taste of Learnlife program, and then they'll explore different passions, different interests and then after that, maybe they'll engage in a passion project. We had one young lady from France who was engaging in fashion design, and her mom had said to me that before she started with Learnlife, she was very unhappy with the school system. She just felt, drained. She didn't want to learn anymore, and she was just very frustrated. So her mom signed her up for Taste of Learnlife and for a passion project. And she just blossomed. Her mom said she became another child. She was so excited about learning again, and it was her own intrinsic motivation that was pushing her to learn, and she was excited about learning. There's another young boy that we have from Germany, and he said to his mom, there's two things that I love that I look forward to during the week. The one is playing football, and the other is going to Learnlife's Taste of Learnlife, because it's just such a great opportunity for them to experience what learning can be like when it's fun, and when it's self-driven, and when you decide how you're going to learn. And so it's just so. Yes, they're very excited about it. There's there really isn't a challenge for us from that perspective if the learner comes to us and they're really, they want to learn. But it can be a challenge, for example, if a learner has just lost all interest whatsoever, and so they have to go through an unschooling process where they can feel trust again, where they can trust us, and then they know that they're being respected, their ideas are respected. And to just really find that passion and love of learning again by exploring what their interests are. And that can take some time. It isn't something that, it depends on how, I don't want to say damaged. I'm going to say it, how damaged they've been by their school experience. And we have that here as well with our full-time program, where we have to go through that unschooling process of helping the learners really realize and believe in the fact that they can have control and agency over their learning, and that this is an okay thing, and that their learning guides aren't their teachers who make decisions for them, but that they really have to take responsibility, make decisions and choices for themselves. And that is a process that they don't always that they don't always engage in immediately, you know, but that's true also in older learners too. If you go to graduate school, I taught graduate school for a while, and many of my students were like that, where you had to really get them to engage and take responsibility for their learning, because they were used to just pumping out essays, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah, I've experienced exactly the same thing, and I had to resort to extreme measures sometimes, including things like inserting patently false bits of information into the learning session to see if anyone was actually paying attention, and they would catch me on it, you know, just to say, don't be so passive. But I imagine that the challenge is not, from what I understand now, is probably not necessarily for Learnlife, but probably it must be difficult to learn with a program like Learnlife from home and then go back the next day into the more rigid traditional environment. Must be a challenge, but at least they can experience that dichotomy and say, well, things don't always need to be that way. And from speaking to learning guides at Learnlife, it seems that, you know, anybody who is working in that environment has to go through an unschooling process, including the learning guides. I mean, who have perhaps taught in traditional schools and left because they had that feeling that something just ain't right. There's better, we can do better. But it takes a long time to, even the language, the approach, old habits. So I guess that the mentoring sessions you offer are critical. You know, I mean, I saw this on the website that you do offer mentor hours to learners that are in Learnlife from home. I mean, how does that actually work? I mean, what would be the structure of that?
It would depend on the learner and how self-directed they are. If a highly self-directed learner doesn't necessarily need a lot of mentoring in moving along. They need to have check-ins every once in a while to see how they're doing, to see what path they might want to explore further, to talk about different challenges they're facing, and to get some guidance from the learning guide on how to move forward. Younger learners or less self-directed learners may need more structure. They may need more guidance from the learning guides, and I think that's where the mentor hours really come in and are critical, is that they have those opportunities to meet with the learning guide and say, okay, I'm really stuck here, and I don't know how to move forward. Or maybe they need just the basic skill of, how do I organize myself? How do I organize my day? How do I structure my study time? How do I build these study skills that I'll need, or these learning skills that I'll need for the future? And that's where the mentor hours are really critical, that they have an opportunity to talk to a learning guide, and sometimes also to talk to other learners to get some inputs on how they can improve on how they're learning, and what they can do to improve on that. So it's really, mentor hours are really critical, because the mentor is the person that helps guide them and knows them and has followed them along their learning journey, and can then support them and celebrate with them when they reach their learning goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge responsibility, isn't it? You know, so I mean, just if I understand then, that if I'm thinking about the types or the contexts of, you know, families and learners that Learnlife from home would, I mean, obviously it's certainly for everybody, naturally, but so I'm thinking about families that, for example, work internationally and travel a lot, and they want stability and coherence through the experience that their children are having, so they're not pulled in and out of different schools. You know, they have a coherent learning environment with, as you say, for example, a mentor as an anchor, a thread that follows them as their environment is consistently changing, because that can't always be easy for families like that to try to have some stability and consistency. So Learnlife from home is a great solution for that, I would think. And also the learners that have already developed their passions that are just not compatible with a traditional timetable, let's say, because your example with the learner that plays football and doesn't want to have to choose learning or following this, you know, they're both part of who that person is, and they can follow both. So it's a way of not having to sacrifice or compromise on your passions. Seems to be another big appeal, and also as a complement to traditional learning as well, to say, you know, for the parents who might feel more comfortable to say, well, I want my learner to be in this traditional system, but can also see that it's underserving them in pretty significant ways. And rather than make the kind of, the bigger shift to say, well, okay, moving full-time into a different system, you can say, well, why not both? And Learnlife from home can act as a complement and allow them space to pursue their passion projects and to learn in a self-directed, personal way. Is there any other typology that I've kind of missed there? I mean, it seems like that would be the big appeals.
No, yeah, I think you've covered all of them. I mean, I think the first one is really our primary target, I guess, if we're going to have a target of learner, but they're the kind of the families that are global, nomadic, that are moving all around the world. What Learnlife offers is a kind of high flex environment that brings this flexibility of learning where, maybe they're in Barcelona and they're at the urban hub and they're learning for a month or two, and then they are moving to China and then they want their learners to learn online. Or if we eventually open a learning hub in China, they would have an opportunity to go to that learning hub if they wanted to, and to learn from that learning hub. So there's a lot of opportunities for families that are moving around the world to engage with us and to engage with others who are learning online or in one of the Learnlife hubs. So yeah, that's and the only way that we can do this is because of the fact that Learnlife is all about our positive values of mutual trust and respect and collaborative learning and growth. And so it's really important that we are able to create these environments where learners feel comfortable to learn regardless of where they're learning.
Yeah, and that seems to me to be I imagine that a lot of, more and more families, you use the word nomadic, more and more families are like this these days. I mean, that's the way the world is evolving, isn't it? That technology is breaking down some of those barriers, and, people are moving around, and there's always been that trade-off. I've looked at families that have lived like that and thought, on one hand, what a beautiful, enriching experience it is for that young learner to be among such diverse experiences, but at the same time worried about the social aspect, which is so critical, and being pulled in and out of these different environments. So it seems like this is something that allows them to get the best out of that experience and not compromise on that social consistency, and to have a strong network of people around them with whom they can build relationships and build trust. See, that seems like a huge thing, actually. So I'm very glad to hear it's there. Well, thank you for your time, Lisa Marie. I think we've gone through, I think I've got a bit of a clearer idea on how it all works. And you mentioned if Learnlife opens a hub in China, I think it's a question of when, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
We've got so many hubs that are planned and that are coming up. And the Hamburg hub is really exciting. We'll be opening up in the fall, and Athens is one of the next hubs that we're looking at. So it's very exciting, very, very exciting, the hubs. And of course, we have already have hubs that have opened in Zurich, one that will be opening in Bern, one in Munich. And so Europe is slowly embracing Learnlife and the hub concept. So that's very exciting.
Oh, and for good reason, I think. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you, Mark.
Enjoy the rest of your time. I hope you managed to escape from the yellow submarine.
I think I will.
Okay, thank you. Take care now.